I'm so glad the elections are almost over. From McGrath and McConnell commercials to trucks speeding down the road with Trump flags, it's all getting to be a bit annoying. But as a Christian who's always leaned right politically, this time I stepped outside of my comfort zone to support Biden, a candidate I believe represented my moral compass more accurately. However, I, like many others, was disappointed in the poor performance of the Democratic Party this election, even though they may clinch the presidency. If a clearly discriminatory Trump can win over many racial minorities, even in a time of racial conflict around the nation, there's a symbol of a much greater problem amongst the Democratic voter base. And that problem is the Democratic Party is going too extreme. So the question brought before us today is, should Democrats be worried by the GOP's performance amongst racial minorities in 2020? And I believe the clear answer is yes, for three reasons. First, while white liberals are concerned about their public image if they support Trump, minorities are more concerned about the extreme left the Democrats are infringing upon. Second, 2020 is a pivotal year in US race relations. If minorities can accept Trump this year, then they will even more so accept candidates that are milder but like him in the future. And third, there's a long history of famous Black societal leaders campaigning for Republicans that continued for Trump, despite his political actions. Similarly to how I cannot accept Trump's discriminatory speech, many white voters find it unacceptable. But the first reason why Democrats should be concerned is because while white liberals are concerned about their public image if they support Trump, minorities are more concerned about the extreme left the Democrats are infringing upon. NBC on November the 2nd tells us that Donald Trump gained 3% of Black and 2% of Hispanic voters, along with 3% of Asian voters. Research shows this is because racial minorities simply do not find a lot of Trump's speech racist. In fact, the reason Trump was viewed as so racist was because the people surveyed were all white in those research studies, not actually minorities. And when they surveyed minorities, they didn't actually end up caring so much. According to the Associated Press on November the 4th, Trump has depicted the Republican Party instead of the Democratic Party as the new, quote, working class, uneducated party. And this appeals to many lower income, hardworking immigrants and minorities who feel that Trump is supporting their interests. According to Texas Tribune on November the 4th, a number of Texas Republican candidates at all levels of government, local to national, are second-generation Hispanic descendants and Black Americans. And this makes many minorities believe that Republicans can support their interests well. And just as I am particularly anti-Trump in the racial environment this year, the second reason why Democrats should be concerned is that 2020 is a pivotal year in US race relations. If minorities can accept Trump this year, then they will even more so accept candidates like him in the future. Pew Research on April the 9th tells us that the majority of Americans say race relations are bad in the United States right now, and 7/10 of those people say that they're getting worse, and including majorities in white, Black, and Hispanic groups that also say they're getting worse and worse. And Trump is clearly widening that divide in the United States. If minorities can accept him and vote for him this year, come less extreme Republican candidates in the future, Democrats will lose even more minority votes in the years to come. From a different Pew Research article also in April, Republicans are more inclined to admit that the legacy of slavery and racism still adversely affects American society, a position that previously only Democrats were willing to take on. Many hardcore Republicans are becoming less prejudiced and more accepting, so many minorities will likely join Republican ranks in the future simply for that reason. And just like I am more likely to support Andrew Yang because he's Taiwanese like me, and it's just cool to be represented that way, many societal figures sway minority voters. So the third reason why the Democrats should be extremely concerned is because there's a long history of famous Black societal leaders campaigning for Republicans, and that continued for Trump despite his political actions. Washington Post on November the 3rd tells us that Nixon had Jackie Robinson's support for his 1960 campaign. And even though he lost Robinson's support in 61, he gained dozens of basketball and football stars' supports for his 1968 and 72 campaigns. According to that same Washington Post article, Republicans woo Black leaders by economically supporting them and more or less misleading them to believe that their condition reflects the White House's attitudes toward other Black voters. And it also made them, these influential Black leaders, believe that they were making significant progress toward racial equality, which in fact was an illusion. CBS on November the 2nd tells us that quite a few Black leaders, such as Herschel Walker, Diamond and Silk, and Stacey Dash, are publicly stepping behind Trump, swaying many minority voters into believing that the Republican Party is being positively influenced, which in the past has been an illusion. So the question before us in review today is, should Democrats be worried by the GOP's performance amongst racial minorities in 2020? And I believe the clear answer is yes, for three reasons. First, while white liberals are concerned about their public image if they support Trump, minorities are more concerned about the extreme left the Democrats are infringing upon. Second, 2020 is a pivotal year in U.S. race relations. If minorities can accept Trump this year, then they will even more so accept candidates like him in the future. And third, there's a long history of famous Black societal leaders campaigning for Republicans, and that continued for Trump despite his political and personal actions. In conclusion, because I was disappointed in the poor performance of the Democratic Party this time and the increasingly liberal Democratic policies, I will likely never support a Democratic presidential candidate again. Trump is a one-of-a-kind president with no political experience and a particularly bad personal record, prompting me to make a temporary switch to the left. However, in between minority voters like me cannot keep voting one way simply because of race relations. We need to step outside of that and open our eyes to the policy that each candidate is supporting. I don't agree with liberal policy, and I'm vocal against it. So watch out, Democrats. The traditional biblical voters could be coming back strong in all races, ethnicities, and backgrounds. Thank you.